Euripides once said, "No one is truly free. They are a slave to wealth, fortune, the law, or other people restraining them from acting according to their will." In Medea, Euripides develops Medea to embody a distorted view of justice. Although the messengers recounted the murdering of the princess may seem to portray Medea's actions as sheerly immoral, it is actually a battle warranted by her uncertainty between love and safety and revenge and justice. Euripides uses the messenger's monologue to argue that rashly taking justice into one's own hands will have irreversible lifelong repercussions. Medea's Hamar shall ultimately cause her downfall by leading her down a path of false justice. Since Medea could not accept Jason's abandonment and betrayal, her god complex would eventually cause her to become the sole decider of his fate. She would eventually experience catharsis when she kills the royals and her children to get revenge on Jason. Medea would also reach catastrophe at the end of the play when her actions do not benefit her and she ultimately meets her fate.
Based on evidence provided by witness and the clinical evaluation of Dr. Rumack, I have deemed Medea to be mentally unstable, thus requiring immediate institution commitment at a mental asylum.
So did you hear about that patient in Department C?
I know, they've gone absolutely crazy.
I cannot believe that.
I mean, like, honestly,
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
So I understand that we have some new patients that entered our facility within the last month. If you were assigned to any of these patients, please provide us with a quick debriefing of your particular patient.
So I'll start. I have patient 1145 named Oedipus Rex, who was admitted for killing his father so he could marry his mother, and we have him under medication and currently observing him.
I have a new client as well, patient 1153. Her name is Medea. Now she's a wild one. Crazy story to how she ended up here. She actually found out her husband cheated on her and was going to marry another woman. A princess, in fact, so she decided to get her revenge.
Hold up. Let me guess. She cited mental insanity in hopes to reduce her sentence.
I wish it were that simple. You see, she actually poisoned the princess, killing her almost instantly. When her father ran in to save her, he too met an untimely end. And if that wasn't enough, she also killed her own sons as well. She was on her way to Athens seeking refuge from Aegeus, king of Athens. The only reason he even allowed that mad woman to enter his land was because Medea promised to restore his infertility. She was only a few days away when the guards caught her. She pleaded guilty, and judge and jury alike sentenced her to 110 years in jail and psychiatric help, of course. Our first section is actually today. And if you don't mind at all, I have to leave this meeting a little early to make our session.
It was just justice! Justice! I did the right thing, okay? I didn't do anything wrong! Let me out of here!
It's nice to see that you've joined me. I understand that you've had some difficulty coming to terms with your actions. Why don't you take me through what you were thinking? Then we can work on it together.
Why does it matter? You wouldn't even understand. Why don't you just let me out early and save both of us and stop wasting each other's time? I have better things to do. You have better things to do. Probably.
Would you consider that a goal of yours then, to get out early?
No, I would love to stay in this hellhole forever.
Well, maybe if you talk it out with me, I can help you better understand your actions. I'm sure that once you understand, it'll be easier for you to convince the board to give you early release.
Fine. I'll give you the 411. You see, as I walked out of my house on that glorious afternoon, I was greeted by the wide-eyed, frenzied messenger sprinting up to me, hearing the news that would make me whole again. The news that would free me from this torturous humiliation my husband dared bring forth upon me. He told me,
When your two children came in with their father and went to the bridal chambers, we slaves were glad, those of us who had been distressed before by your troubles. From year to year, talk spread quickly that you and your husband had called a truce to your earlier quarrel. One kisses a hand, another the blonde heads of the children. I was beside myself with joy and followed along to the women's quarters with the children. And our mistress, to whom we pay respect now instead of you, before she caught sight of your two children, held her eyes fixed eagerly on Jason. But then she covered up her face and turned away her pale cheek, sickened by the approach of the children.
who could blame her? They were my kids, meaning that they were 100 times more beautiful than she would ever be.
But your husband was trying to assuage the rancor and venom of the young woman by telling her this. Do not be angry at my family. Won't you stifle your rage and turn back your face? Hold your husband's loved ones as your own. Take the gifts and ask your father to revoke the sentence of exile for my children, for my sake. And she, when she saw the fine garments, did not resist, but agreed with her husband in everything. And before father and children were far from the house, she scooped up the fine robe and put it on. Then she fitted the golden crown around her curls and with a shimmering mirror arranged her hair, smiling at the lifeless image of her face. And then she gets up from her throne and walks through the room, stepping lightly on her delicate feet, overjoyed with the gifts, again and again casting an eye upon her arched foot.
So clearly, that indecisive princess was torn between accepting the gifts from her enemy's heir and between getting her hands on the most luxurious gifts of lands. But as per usual, because of her selfish, good-for-nothing little brat, what she did was be driven by her simple, materialistic mind, and she foolishly took the gifts.
I mean, that's a good start. Resolving your differences can be a good step towards proving good behavior.
You're just as gullible as Jason was.
Did you say something?
No, nothing at all. But it gets better. It gets so much better.
Suddenly there was a terrible sight to see. The color drains from her face, her step unsteady. She tries to go back, trembling from head to foot, and barely manages to stumble into her seat and avoid falling on the ground. Then an old woman, one of her slaves, thinking a fit from Pan or one of the gods had seized her, let out a wail before she saw white foam streaming from her mouth and from her eyes. The pupils turned black, and the blood was drained from her skin. Then there came a terrible cry in answer to the wail. At once one slave ran to her father's room, another to her new husband, to tell them what was happening to the bride. The whole house reverberated with the sound of running feet. By now a fast walker, turning the last lap of the course, would be reaching his goal, and the poor woman, her eyes glazed over, stirred from her silence, and with a deep groan was trying to get up. But a twofold trouble was warring against her. The crown of gold around her head was spewing out an eerie stream of ravenous fire, and the fine robes, gifts from your children, were eating away the poor girl's beautiful flesh.
The moment she got up, you could see the color drain from her face. The real joy came after, though, when she finally got what she deserved. The second she rose, you could see the life begin to leave her. The madness had finally begun.
She stands up and tries to escape, but she is on fire. She shakes her head this way and that, trying to throw off the crown, but all the more tightly the gold holds its bond, and the fire, when she shook her head, burned twice as bright. Overcome by the disaster, she falls to the floor, unrecognizable to the sight of anyone but a parent. The condition of her eyes and her once lovely face were murky, and blood dripped from the top of her head with fire mixed in, and the flesh was dripping from her bones like sap from a pine. Through the hidden gnawing of the poisons, a terrible sight. We were all afraid to touch the body. We had our fate to teach us.
You mean to tell me that this whole time, the whole purpose of getting the gifts of showing compassion and forgiveness to Jason and the princess was to murder him?
Guess you're not as stupid as they say.
But why? Why do you have to gain from these sickening actions? Are you expecting Jason to come back to you? There are no benefits to doing any of this.
I sacrificed everything for Jason. My country, my family, but I was destroyed by him regardless. I was devoted to him, a loyal wife. But what was he to me? Clearly not that. Who else was going to be the one to carry out this long overdue sentence? There was no escape from true justice.
Medea, you cannot just develop a god complex and be the judge and jury of Jason's fate. Did you talk to anyone about your plan to kill these people? Didn't anyone help you through these troubled times? Wasn't anyone there to convince you not to act so rashly?
Oh, sure, there were people who tried to tell me to do the right thing, but what did they know? I had the course with me every step of the way. They understood my troubles and my humiliation. They saw the dangers of love, the shame of exile. They tried to persuade me to just leave Jason with his new family behind, to start over somewhere new. They told me, if your husband is gone to adore a new bride in his bed, why this has often happened before. Do not harm your soul, for Zeus will succor your cause. I considered for a moment that maybe I could forget. Just maybe I could start somewhere new and let my poor children live. But it was just betrayal on betrayal. They did not fathom. They couldn't fathom. I couldn't leave Jason's fate up to the gods. I couldn't just stop until I had ripped Jason's life to nothing, and no one could do that. I had to be the one to do it. I, and only I, could make things right again.
But her poor father, in ignorance of the tragedy, suddenly bursts into the room and throws himself on the body. He cries out, and enfolding her in his arms, he kisses her and speaks to her. "My poor child, which of the gods has mangled you so horribly? Who has made me an aged tomb to grieve for you? Ah me, let me die with you, my child." And when he stopped his weeping and wailing, he wanted to raise up his old limbs, but was held back by the fine robes like ivy, by the shoots of laurel. The struggle was hair-raising. He wanted to get up on his feet, but she held him fast. If he tried to use force, she tore the aged flesh from his bones. After a time, he was exhausted, and the poor man let go of life. He was not strong enough to fight the disaster. They lie dead together, child and aged father beside her, a tragedy that makes you want to cry. In my view, your part is beyond my telling. You will know how to escape punishment. Not for the first time I find our lives are a shadow, and I am not afraid to say that people who think they have everything figured out are masters of logic. They are responsible for the greatest folly. No human being is happy. Strike it rich, and you are luckier than your neighbor, but happy, never.
That's it. And they all lived happily ever after. Well, I did.
Do you think this was all worth it? Look where you are now. Not only have you sacrificed your sanity, but just take a look at what you've done to your children. Do you think their deaths were truly necessary?
You know, the nurse asked me the very same question. She asked me, why do you entangle the children in their father's wrongdoing? Why do you hate them? But the truth is, I don't. At least not directly.
You even promised to children kindness. It doesn't seem like you have an issue with children in general, so why kill your own?
As if I had a choice. Those boys were too much. Every waking moment is only a reminder of how I was constantly oppressed by their gender, of how I wasted my life for that cursed patriarchy to only have it come around and bite me. I was done. Those two children reminded me too much of Jason. They needed to go, and I was the only one who could do it.
Medea, your actions are irreversible. You may think that you've won, that you've given the most thought-out, well-planned revenge possible to your ex-husband, but glory is never permanent. For the rest of your life, you'll be burdened with carrying the weight of the bodies and souls you've killed. You are not happy, you are just lucky, but luck never stays, and no human is ever happy.
Well, someone's a little negative Nancy today.
You're going down a road of false justice.
I don't regret my decision. Jason got what he deserved. But my children, oh, my poor tortured children. How I wish they didn't have to suffer because of their hateful, heartless, cruel father. How bleak this world is now without them. Why must I lay here in this mustic, horrific place while my children lie on the earth so far from me? How ridiculous. I don't belong here. This is for idiots with no intelligent mind like Oedipus. This is not where I should be celebrating my